Convergence is defense spending and kind of the military-industrial complex. You have somebody like Barack Obama runs as the peace candidate and immediately triples troop strengths in Afghanistan. How did the military-industrial complex just rise to its supremacy?
Well, first of all, it exaggerates foreign perils. Eisenhower pointed this out, and MacArthur, Douglas MacArthur. And it's huge business. And there's always some new enemy they're going to find. And then you wave the flag, and then you pour the money, campaign money, into the Congress and the White House candidates. The industrial war machine has got their hooks into both Democrat and Republican parties. The total support of the military-industrial complex and empire and war by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, is staggering. I mean, it would stagger Eisenhower. It would even blush Nixon. The Democrats go nuts from challenges from the left. I mean, we were sued 24 times in 12 weeks in the summer of 2004 to get us off one state ballot after another. One time we got a notice to be in 9 Pennsylvania state courts on Monday morning. Nothing terrifies corporatist politicians and corporate bosses than a left-right public opinion going operational, Nick. The key is becoming more visible, becoming more strategic, getting media, getting on the table of candidates and political agendas by incumbents.
In the 2000 election, one of the arguments that third-party candidates hear all the time is that you cost me the election. If I'm a Republican or a Democrat. Did you cost Al Gore the election?
No, and Al Gore agrees. He thinks he blew it in Tennessee, his home state. Everything else being equal, he'd have been in the White House if he got Tennessee. And he thinks it was stolen in a number of ways in Florida. So, but here's where a libertarian really supports. Everybody has an equal right to run for election. If everybody has an equal right, then we're either all spoilers of one another trying to get votes from one another, or none of us are spoilers. We're not second-class citizens because we're a Green Party candidate or Libertarian Party candidate. I have no trouble with libertarians on that one. The brass of these two parties, they control the election machinery, so they keep you off the ballot, harass you, file lawsuits, delay you, exhaust you. They created this corporation called the Commission on Presidential Debates, the two parties, and they decide who gets on and who doesn't.
I agree completely that no third-party candidate has ever cost anybody, a major party candidate, an election, because it presumes that all of our votes rightly belong to the Democrats or Republicans.
It's like they own the votes, the two-party duopoly.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you to our 5th No Peasants candidate panel. I'm very excited tonight. We have Karen Ortiz, who is an independent in New York's 12th, and Nadia Milleron in Massachusetts 1st, right? And she's also an independent, and they both are part of something new called the Independent Candidate Network that just had its first press conference last week in DC. And I'm excited we're going to have more people from that coalition to come on and talk with us. And so that kind of brings me to a point I really want to make about what we're trying to do here. And when I found this video of Ralph Nader speaking, I thought this is exactly to the point. The third party and independent candidates are always up against the major parties. Now, I know we have had one Democrat on. I knew her from before, and I wish her lots of luck. She's running against Cory Booker. But to Ralph Nader's point there, you are thwarted every step of the way. And that's what I saw over and over and over again with the small d, we'll call it, Democrat candidates after Bernie didn't win in 2016. So I want to make it clear, we've had a couple of really great candidates that were part of candidates for Assange and that I knew from CFAR before, and they've made the decision to run with the uniparty or duopoly, take your pick. And I wish them luck. But what we're trying to do here is build, strength with a coalition of independents and Greens and libertarians. So there is kind of an exception, and that is that Jose Vega, who is an independent, who has been on this panel, he has decided to run as a Democrat in the primary in New York. But New York is only one of 2 states, I believe the other one is Connecticut, that does not have sore loser laws. and meaning that he can, if he loses, he can still turn around and run in the general as an independent. I have a feeling they'll change that after Jose runs. But anyway, with that, I also wanted to just quickly say something about the candidate pledge. I think I probably should have clarified this a little better in the beginning, but I've got these graphics of sort of a simplified version, but you can see the full pledge on nopeasants.org. And I wanted to be clear that if you decide to sign it, it isn't a requirement to participate, in these discussions with us. But they're all issues, number one, no more war, freedom of speech and the surveillance state, First and Fourth Amendments, government transparency, demilitarize the police, election security is very important, and transparency in the justice system and legal system. We can get into that a little bit more. Environmental hazards, specifically things that are really local. And then healthcare reform, which is an area that Greens and Libertarians disagree on, but I believe there's room for discussion there. But the point with the pledge is that if you have something that is really specific, it was a little difficult to decide whether to be vague or specific. So if I'm really vague, maybe it has no power. But if I'm too specific, situations can change or certain things on it might not apply to you. So I want to invite anybody that's interested in signing it to, if you have ways that you want to alter it, that isn't like totally vastly different from this, obviously, but like I have open primaries, support open primaries. And I think that's an issue for some Greens, maybe even in my state, North Carolina. So if you want to alter anything, that is, I think, a great idea. Alter it, and then you can use it. You can put it on your website. And I am not the one that came up with the idea of candidate contracts. It goes way back all the way to Grover Norquist, I believe. And CFAR used it as well. So it's just a tool to let candidates know that you're serious. It hasn't been tried in a court, so we have a judge here. Maybe she could speak to whether she thinks maybe it would hold up in court or not. As far as I know, that's never been tried, but it is just a way to signal to your supporters that you are serious. So with that, I will hand it to Phil.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Libertarian representative to this gathering, I suppose. But that being said, I'm in Wisconsin. I have currently have started the Disrupt the Corruption PAC, which I'll explain sort of in a minute. But I've run for office statewide 3 times, twice for state assembly. I've been the Libertarian Party of Wisconsin chair, served on the Libertarian National Committee. But beyond all that, my last campaign in 2024, I ran as Disrupt the Corruption rather than a party title, because my goal, and it was, I think, successful in terms of networking, was to reach out and find people and campaign with people who had common cause against the duopoly. So I worked with the Wisconsin People's Party, the Wisconsin Party, the Socialists, the Green Party. We had peace rallies. We did a bunch of stuff because, as you kind of alluded to with the healthcare issue, Kelly, we may have, in some cases, vastly different solutions to the problem, but we all know what the problem is, and that is duopoly control of these systems for their own profit. So that's what I'm about now. I may or may not run for office again, because as any of you have run before, you know that it's difficult and could be dispiriting if you define victory a certain way. But I define victory as raising issues to be seen in the light of public opinion, and I've been successful at that, and building coalitions and getting things talked about that otherwise would not have been discussed, including and especially peace, marijuana legalization, many other things. So that's why I'm here, and I'm anxious to hear what our candidates have to say after I spin it over to Mr. Michael Harbaugh.
There we go. Unmute. How's it going, everybody? My name is Michael Harbaugh. I'm a food truck owner and first time running for office in 2024 as an independent candidate here in Dayton, Ohio, home of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the United States does all of their research at. hotbed of the military-industrial complex around here. We have a incumbent, over 20-year creature of the system, Mike Turner, head of the Intelligence Committee. So I felt we weren't getting anti-war voices out here, and the Democrats weren't doing anything. And I wanted to run it. And anyway, in 2024, I ran a grassroots campaign based on all activism and showing up. It started up in East Palestine, Ohio, with the toxic train derailment. I brought supplies down to the North Carolina flood victims right before the election last year and did some work down there. Protests for Gaza. And then this last May, we kicked NATO out of town when they had their parliamentary assembly here. I led the anti-war response to those thugs coming to town. So anyway, I'm happy you all are here. I think it's great. This independent network is awesome. I can't wait to hear about that. But let me just pass it to the candidates real quick, give a quick little introduction, and we can jump into a few questions about your campaigns. Let's go to Karen first, up in New York.
Yeah, New York. I'm Karen Ortiz. I'm an independent, first time running for office.
Woohoo!
I'm running in New York District 12, which has been lovingly called the clown car race because there's so many people running. But I'm a former EEOC administrative judge, that's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And I was one of the first federal employees at the beginning of this Trump administration to ring the alarm bells, not only about my own agency enacting anti-trans measures, but also against DOJ. So I refused to stay quiet. I refused to comply with the executive orders. I had sent some internal emails telling the chair of the agency, the acting chair then, now she's been confirmed and is the chair of the agency, basically telling her she should resign, that she was breaking her oath to the Constitution. Somebody leaked one of those emails. It got on Reddit, it took on a life of its own, and I was sort of thrust into the public. I'm actually quite the introvert, but I decided to run with it. I stayed firm, 10 toes down on what I believed. The agency eventually fired me last June, and all they did was set me loose so I could run for Congress.
Awesome.
Between then and now, I also participated in the Global Samud Flotilla, and that's where I met Nadia's two of her children. And I've been very active in Palestine liberation movement, as well as anti-ICE movement, as well as the impeachment movement.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Excellent. Yeah, congrats. All right, over to you, Nadia.
Hi, everybody. I'm so grateful to be on this program. Thank you, Kelly and Phil and Michael, for hosting us. I am a big fan of Karen Ortiz. I met her in person recently in Washington, D.C., where we were both with a group of independent candidates who are coming from all across the political spectrum, but we agree that our democracy is falling apart, and we agree on some measures that we could take together to form a solution. So I was an apolitical person 7 years ago, and then on March 10th, 2019, my daughter was killed by Boeing on a new Boeing aircraft. So in October of 2018, that same Boeing Max dove itself into the sea by Indonesia. And then on March 10th, 2019, the same new aircraft that had electrical faults in December dove itself into 4 farmers' plots of land in Ethiopia, just 6 minutes and 40 seconds flight outside of the capital where it took off. So I was devastated, of course, by this. I had been a very private person, despite being an attorney, despite being the niece of Ralph Nader. I thought politics was a dirty business and I didn't want to get involved. But I still didn't want to get involved after this crash happened. But my uncle, Ralph Nader, pointed out to me that the FAA had decreased the comment period to get the plane back in service in May of 2019 from 30 days to 15 days. So that meant they were rushing it. That meant that they weren't fixing the problems with the plane or even investigating what those problems were. And so I actually got involved politically, not because I thought I could cause the plane to be fixed, but because I thought that if a third plane went down, and I had just sat on the couch crying about my daughter, that I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I might do away with myself then, because if I was just quiet and let another plane of 160 or 70 people go down and I just said nothing, how could I stand myself after that? I knew that there was something wrong with the plane and that it had to be fixed. So at that point, our family went into high gear, and we did a lot of work in Washington with the three branches, executive, judicial, and Congress. And there was a big investigation, and Boeing was found to be at fault. We also filed a civil suit against Boeing, which is still in process. The criminal suit, we lost that, but I mean, of course, we had no standing as families, but we intervened as victims, and it took us 1.5 years to be adjudicated victims. Anyway, the judges ruled against us in that case, but we are appealing to the Fifth Circuit in Louisiana. So for 7 years, I've been involved in this kind of advocacy and making things happen, and I actually have helped pass legislation, and feeling energy from that, I actually went to Illinois because I thought, oh, Boeing needs to have a calculator where they can't insure for wrongful death. And so if there's punitive damages for wrongful death in Illinois, they won't be able to insure. And then their calculator will tell them that they have to clean up their production process and they have to make sure these planes are safe. But actually Boeing moved to Virginia in the process of that. However, in 2 legislative cycles, I was able to help pass punitive damages for wrongful death in Illinois. So now there's about 35 states that have that. So with that kind of success, in November of 2024, I saw that my member of Congress, who has been in Congress before the Berlin Wall fell, he was elected.
Wow.
Okay? So it's been 38 years for him. So he, yeah, but he was the least responsive office, and he was my representative, and he was the least responsive of over 200 offices that we went into and worked with on a daily basis in Washington. And so I thought, this is crazy. Nobody's running against him. No Republican, no Democrat. It's just crazy. I'm just going to run. I no idea like what to do. But I ended up getting 37% of the vote, and more importantly, 133,000 votes. Which means, like, if I get that number of votes again, then I would win the midterm election. If I could motivate, it's not an easy thing to do, but if I motivate and say to those people, hey, you voted for me once, go out and make good on your investment and get the first independent woman into Congress.
That would be great.
Yeah,
that would be incredible. It's been so
5 of us, which between Paul Burton, who's a math genius who helped bring us together, he estimated that between 5 and 15 of these independent candidates who are running do have a chance of winning. And there's more than 30 who are running. But
nice.
If we get in, we can deny the Republicans and Democrats a majority, and we can actually change
wag the dog.
the House so that there are single subject bills, so there's more accountability, and we can start to rehabilitate our democracy. So.
In withholding your vote and doing a voting block. And I think on that note, let me bring Karen in and ask you about that. You're a board member on the Independent Candidate Network. What is your ideas behind forming a voting block of independent candidates to stick it to the Democrats and Republicans in Congress?
I mean, I see it more as not so much sticking it to the Dems and the Republicans, but giving the American people a fighting chance. The way, I was a lifelong Democrat. I only recently left the Democratic Party because I was so disgusted with how they treated federal employees, and they didn't fight for us, and a number of other things. But for me, the mask started slipping when Obama was in office. I was like a rah-rah Obama fan, and he referred to, I think it was Edward Snowden, as a hacker. And something went off in my brain and was like, huh? You don't call an NSA contractor who's got a high level of security clearance a hacker, like an offhand comment. So the mask started to slip for me on the Democratic Party back then, and it's slowly built. And I started to see, and now it's really obvious how the Democrats and the Republicans are acting as one party. And you even saw it in the last vote, where it was just the number of votes from the Dems that was needed to not get the job done. So I see this as more of an offering to the American people that we're going to go ahead and do this. We don't need the establishment Dems and the GOP to give us permission to run as independents.
You can I think you can stick it to them in a way, and I understand what you're saying too, so I don't totally mean that. But at the same time, though, like if 5 people, 5 independents, you can form a voting bloc. In a way, you can control what passes. And we saw this in 2020 with the whole force the vote on Medicare for all that they were trying to pressure progressive Democrats to do, and a lot of people online community, and they chose not to. But and then I think you saw House Republicans use some leverage, Tea Party. So anyway, in a way, what do you think a Congress would look like, Karen? And then I'll ask Nadia the same question about if there's a block of candidates that can, in a way, decide what passes and what doesn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, I one of the things that we do want to impose or bring back really is decorum and single subject bills. So I think that is super, super important. You get these bills and they shove stuff in at the last minute. They really screw over the American people. They mess with the budget. So I think that to me is a big draw. But just Nadia had referenced earlier that we had met in DC. So we had our first meetings in person with, there were 12 of us from the Independent Candidate Network in DC for a few days, meeting, doing all of the things. And we are all very different. Some of us are super left, some are right. We have libertarians, and we were all amazed at how we could work together. And not only can we form a block and keep bad stuff from happening and push good legislation to be enacted, but we can, that whole energy and approach, we can make that go viral. And Congress could look, in 5-10 years, completely different, way more civil, function the way it's supposed to, not make it a factory to create political rock stars, but actual public servants.
Right.
Wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, I think we get a little sampling of that here when we've brought on, Greens and libertarians that you would think like they might not ever have talked. And we sit here and we have conversations about, the surveillance state, like Snowden, or, foreign policy. And it's amazing how functional that is. But
or even the insurance industry stranglehold on and whether you want single payer or free market healthcare, the problem is the same. It's the stranglehold that the insurance companies have on the process and the politicians that they own.
Yeah, and Phil, I think you put it perfectly last time we were on. You said that we're all just out here throwing pebbles at the drawbridge. We can't even get in to do something if,
Right. It's tragic, really. But one thing I want to point out, and what my role on how it's become on this podcast and on the Free Assange one, Candidates for Assange one, is like I'm the guy that's ran for office probably one too many times and maybe gotten a little bit cynical, possibly. Although I'll keep running, but we have to remember that everything that we're considering and that we're hopeful for, a coalition of independent third-party candidates in Congress or in your state house or whatever, are all things that the duopoly party knows about and is already working against. It started, I think it was mentioned in the clip by Ralph Nader about how they started their own debate corporation in 1996 to keep Ross Perot out of debates. And ever since, they've done everything on every state at every level, and they work from federal all the way down into state houses and state elections.
That's 100% correct. They just banned ranked choice voting in Ohio.
So yeah, exactly. And so we need to be. I don't want to say we need to be less optimistic or naive, because I'm that way, and I think that is the energy and the hopefulness that's required to do the work that we've done and that you're doing. That's important, because you can't wake up in the morning and go campaign and ask people for money and ask people for their votes and support if you don't think that that you have a path to winning. That being said, we have to, I think, and that's one of the fantastic goals of this podcast, is we need to share information about tactics and things that they do and things that we can do or things that we have done that don't work, because the last thing that we want, I think, is to have just cycle after cycle of optimistic candidates who are thinking up solutions that have already been used before and maybe haven't been as effective think they might be, or rather, we've underestimated the tyranny of the duopoly and their conniving ways and their vast, almost infinite supply of money.
Right.
And share, and so that we're not like sort of sending people wave after wave of people into the fire, and we're actually working across election cycles. So
Great. Well, do go and check out, go watch the rest of that interview with on Reason, I think it's called, on YouTube, Reason Magazine, I believe. And it was with Nick Gillespie, who's a libertarian. And it's Ralph Nader talking about this book that I got years ago. And that was what, 2012, I think it was.
And just to add one thing after what Ralph said, being blamed for people winning. I still, I'm blamed. Tony Evers has been the governor of Wisconsin. He's finishing his second term now. And I'm still blamed as the person who beat the spread in 2018 that got him the victory. I'm blamed for Tammy Baldwin being in the U.S. Senate. And the people, and I think there's a good thing to share with our new candidates. Voters aren't rational, generally speaking. Like most of them aren't. So when you get accused of being a spoiler, in whichever side you would be the spoiler for, even if the numbers don't work, even if, like as has happened to me, you didn't even get enough votes, or if you threw them all to one side, it would make a difference. They don't care. People who are totally immersed in supporting one of the duopoly parties or candidates are just looking for any sort of even implausible lie to believe, rather than to believe that things are unfair, their candidate isn't virtuous or standing up for right. They will discredit facts, they will discredit science, they will discredit math, public records of vote totals, etc. They will disregard all of that and believe the most craziest lie. I'll give you one last example, then I'll shut up for now. The Libertarians have a candidate running for Neenah City Council. Neenah's a town of like 40,000 people, eastern Wisconsin. His opponent is a Democrat who is not online, but telling people that my friend Brian worships Satan. Now, Brian likes to wear black, and he likes to wear red shirts underneath, and he's got a long beard. He doesn't worship Satan. They want to believe that because they don't want to believe that there's something wrong with their candidate or their party. They will believe anything. Even the most ridiculous lies. With Trump supporters, we've all seen that, right? Especially Trump supporters. But that's a psychological thing that you have to calculus into assuming that you can persuade people, because hopefully you will, but there's just really an uphill climb to fighting that psychology.
Well, Phil, that really is the reason why this is such a magical year and why this can happen this year, is that the voters are so fed up. Like, they don't want, at least in our district, they do not buy any of these lies. They know that the Democratic Party has not served them. And that's what the independent candidates together agree on, that we want to defend democracy itself. The government should work for us, and we allow government to have power to serve us. And if they don't serve us properly, then we take that power away. We have to have people be accountable. That's where the single subject bill, it doesn't allow a representative to hide their vote for any particular issue.
Can I ask? That's why I would argue it'll be very difficult to make that happen, because there's been people like Rand Paul, Thomas Massey. I'm sure some Democrats have stood up for that. But if they're true votes, which are already sold to their donors and to the big unions, or not unions, but the big corporations and the lobbies, I meant to say, were known, then the whole system would fall apart. So they will do anything to stop that. And I hope we're successful.
Sure, but if we withhold our votes,
right,
the 5 people that could get in, okay?
Right.
If we withhold, we stand strong and we withhold our votes for leadership and we say we have to vote, it's going to be very hard for representatives to stand up and say, I'm not voting for single subject bills. I don't want to be accountable, right? Then they're facing losing on those issues in the future, because I know there can be spin and all this, but
that has been introduced before too. The One Bill at a Time Act, et cetera.
But you didn't have the people who are willing to withhold their vote for leadership until this happens. So I think that one maybe difference or something I'm introducing to the group here is the need for pressure. All right. So, for example, a bipartisan legislation that passed in December of 2024 was the Social Security Fairness Act. Ronald Reagan had this draconian rules that said that people were double dipping for their Social Security if their spouse got a private pension. This is not the case. And the mathematical formula was crazy, and it caused people in public service to be impoverished, especially women who lived longer than men. So ultimately, 85% of those 3 million people affected were women. And you're talking about people who were like a principal of a school or superintendent of a school district who couldn't repair their roof, who owned their house and couldn't, like, had to work at Walmart into their 80s. So this was a terrible situation. It took 15 years for people in police unions, firefighter unions, school districts. They were all fighting to get rid of this and enact a new law, the Social Security Fairness Act. I mean, our representative, Richard Neal, was for a long time the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. He actively blocked this legislation. His sister was directly affected by it. Richard Neal was an orphan whose parents died in a car crash, and he was supported by survivor benefits from Social Security. He was blocking survivor benefits. I mean, it's unbelievable, like how people.
That's what he gets paid to do, though. Unfortunately, that's his campaign coffers get filled for doing that, right? So,
because it's very instructive how it was solved. So, Abigail Spanberger, who's a Democrat, who's now the governor of Virginia, and Garrett Graves, who's a Republican, he was a representative from Louisiana. They brought a discharge petition. They got a majority of members of the House to vote that this should skip the Ways and Means Committee because it had been blocked for so many years coming out of that committee. And they went around it and they just simply voted on the floor of the House. After that happened, I just finished the election. I was so excited to get back into actually working on legislation and working on moving issues forward, because that's something that you're kind of blocked from doing when you're actively campaigning. You're just glad handing people and promoting yourself as a person. I mean, it's really crazy. Like, the skills that you need to be a representative are totally different from the skills that you need to get elected or introduce yourself to 500,000 people. Anyway, I went to Washington and realized that Schumer wasn't bringing this to the floor, and he was saying to the press of the Senate, right? And there were 72 votes in the Senate. They were going to vote for it. So 3 million people affected, right? Public servants. Really crazy of him. What is the Democratic Party thinking? So I went into his office. I figured that out. And then I brought a delegation from my district down, and we all went into his office with a reporter from USA Today. And we said, we see you, Schumer. You are bringing legislation to the floor to sanction universities who have allowed protests on their campuses. And you are bringing that legislation, and you are not bringing this legislation, which is going to pass and which affects 3 million people. And that is emblematic of the Democratic Party betrayal of the regular person, the regular worker in our country.
What response did he give you? Did he give you an answer to that?
The next day.
Nice.
Wow.
So I'm not saying that I was part of those many, many years that it took to pass by a large majority this legislation in the House, or to bring the Senate to be 72 votes in favor of. That took a lot of work, 15 years of work. But I was aware of what Schumer could do, either bad or good, because Boeing has on all their aircraft, they have a text message system for alerts, alerting the crew, right? If there's an emergency, it gives you a priority, green, yellow, red, and what you have to figure out. Only on the MAX aircraft do you have to turn around and leaf through a paper, instruction booklet if you have an emergency, which is really crazy and has caused 11 crashes over the life of the MAX, which was originally produced in 1967, the year my husband was born. So we said, part of the Aviation Safety Act, we said to Boeing, you've got to fix this. You have to comply with the regulations which require this text message safety system, alerting system, like Airbus has on all their planes, and like you have on all your planes. So what did Boeing do? Right before those 2 years were about to expire, where they're supposed to, correct the situation, they went and tried to put it in the omnibus bill, the funding of the government. And we were there. The families were there. We were on Capitol Hill. The Wall Street Journal wrote, "Wow, Boeing is confused. Well, all these families, they're actually blocking them from continuing getting this exemption." This is like a no-brainer. I mean, it's material in the survival of plane loads of people. 11 crashes, crazy. So then Schumer put it into the Military Authorization Act right before that legislation went to the Senate. So it was never on the floor of anything. We could never even see that he was going to do that. So because I saw him do that for evil, for true evil, that he did that, I knew that he had the skills to get the Social Security Fairness Act through. And, and we watched him. He was like a genius, taking it off the floor, moving it into committee, doing this, and all the procedural things. He's really, really skilled at that. But the only way Schumer would do the right thing is with pressure. That's his way.
That's an excellent point. And I want to ask a question of both of you, if that's all right. And we'll start with Karen. Given what Nadia just said, and I think I agree with you, that activism is what you're describing. Pressure activism, like in-person activism, can be supplemented or can be, compared to running for office. When you run for office, generally you get a platform from which to talk, or something at least, maybe not the same as a duopoly. But there's also independent activism, which Nadia pointed out she couldn't do as much of when she has to be a candidate. So given that, how will you define victory? Given the long odds, let's say victory, if you win and you're elected, that's victory. Okay. Secondarily, acknowledging the power of the duopoly and that might not happen, how would you define victory if you don't actually get elected? Let's start with Karen and then Nadia.
My neighbors, my building is right near public housing, and my neighbors right now are facing demolition of New York City Housing Authority buildings and being displaced. And it's a big land grab by Related. This issue is near and dear to my heart. So me personally, I would consider a victory if I don't make it into office, if I push every other candidate, at least the Democrats that are running, to take this issue up. And whoever gets into Congress crosses the finish line, brings that issue, and make sure that HUD is fully funded, that these folks are stay in their homes, that their apartments are rehabilitated, and that their Section 9 is saved. They're trying to turn it into Section 8, which is vouchers, and they have much less tenant protections. That is, for me, what would be victory. And I've already started to make friends with the other candidates and say, like, this is our issue. This is our issue, whoever crosses the finish line. And I said this to Jack Schlossberg, who's the candidate who's running in my race. I've been dropping messages and everything and said, if you win, take this with you. I'm going to put everyone's feet to the fire. I'm also organizing a screening of a documentary about this very issue and inviting every candidate that's running, plus our local elected officials, the community, the tenant leaders, to champion this issue. And that is what I would consider success for me if I don't win.
Very
That's
nice.
awesome.
Isn't it? I find it just. I want to say something though. Democrat. I voted Democrat as well. I voted for Obama twice. But I think once you wake up, which I think a lot of people are now, I love this cartoon. I saw antiwar.com had posted this article by John Reynolds. I'm not sure if this is his cartoon or not, but I thought it was perfect. And I think, when you wake up to the fact that whether it's foreign policy or a whole bunch of other things, it's like the Republicans, we know where they stand on this. And with the Democrats, it's like they're trying to pretend that they're not on the same page with the Republicans on all of these issues. And so I think you're right, Nadia, though, that this year is really a time because we have on both sides people that choose these lesser evils. They're disillusioned. Like if you listen to Ralph Nader, where he was saying that how much, or no, excuse me, it was Gillespie says, Obama ran on this peace, campaign. And then as soon as he's in office, he's, it's boots on the ground to Afghanistan. And I've heard a lot of people that voted for Trump, they aren't his, solid base that are still supporting him now, but other people. And they're just furious, a lot of libertarians, but they're furious with how much a complete turn he's done. And so I think it is great that I can't wait to talk to the other candidates in the independent network as well. So I think that one of them is in Oregon, and I believe he was libertarian. Joseph Lehman, I think.
He's still libertarian.
Oh, he still is. Okay. So the way that works with the independent candidate coalition, you can be a Green or a Libertarian or some other party, or?
I only see, in terms of party affiliation, I so far with the group only see Libertarians. Do you think that's right, Karen?
Yeah.
I mean, there's only like
I think a Green could squeak in.
Okay.
I'm sure they're welcome.
The founder is it Todd Burton?
Paul
Burton. Okay. All right. Well, it's great to see.
Co-founders, Paul Burton and Lauren Collin. Lauren Collin is pretty liberal progressive from Los Angeles.
Yes, he'll be on soon.
More conservative from Arizona.
Okay. Well, I like to have it. I mean, this is great. It's, but it's also good to have that opposing too and see. And again, I think this is a good demonstration for people watching about how it might look, a functional Congress.
So everybody can join me in my victory, which is so concrete and so compelling. So there is legislation in Congress that would stop underride crashes. There are more than 600 of these a year. You're all familiar with them, where a car goes underneath a truck and beheads the persons in the car. So Jane Mansfield in 1969 was beheaded in that manner. And at that time, the US government said, we are going to mandate barriers. So on the back of the truck and the sides of the truck. And those barriers make the truck more aerodynamic. So it does take a while, but in 17 years, they achieve a, cost, then the barriers were not, they do not cost anything. So for all of those 17 years, the truck is increasing its fuel efficiency, reducing its cost. And, if it gets to 17 years, then the barriers are free. But still, despite that, the trucking industry has lobbied the US government and prevented these effective barriers. Okay, they did get a regulation to put a barrier that does nothing. The car still can go through it. It's not effective. But effective barriers they have prevented from putting on their trucks. So this legislation is active in Congress right now, and we are going to have my friend who lost her two daughters in this type of accident. She was in Georgia. Another truck hit her car, spun the car around, and the car went backwards under the truck. The back seat went under, killing her two daughters, and she and her son were not harmed in the front seat. So she has made it her mission in memory of her daughters. And many people who have these type of crashes don't understand that the crash could have been prevented. They don't know. They just think, oh, it was a terrible tragedy. They don't understand that because of the trucking industry, they didn't have the barrier that could have saved their lives. Kind of like if you didn't understand that there could be a seatbelt. I mean, these technologies are created by the industry. So GM had seatbelts and airbags for many, many years before they were required to put them in. And why didn't they put them in? Because Americans are actually not litigious. Americans don't sue. Americans who sue are corporations. Those are the people that have the biggest litigious activity in courts. But Americans themselves, individuals, are not interested in suing. And so those few that would come forward and sue GM, the GM would just pay them off, and then it would save the company, save them. I don't know how you can even imagine saying that, but they did find all these letters saying that it would save the company a lot of money to not put in seatbelts and airbags. And then, of course, Congress mandated it, and now car companies advertise that they have a strong safety system. Well, the same is true with these truck barriers. And so on April 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and all across the country, we are going to have a town hall meeting with 50 breakout rooms, one for each state, where there's going to be a presentation of what this actually means in the legislation. And then we are going to get legislators and their staff members to join those state breakout rooms and hear from their own constituents who have faced this and who don't want this slaughter to continue happening. So if all of the people listening and watching this show can participate in that, in that town hall meeting, and you can call your representative or your senator and say, hey, I know this is happening. Can you look into it? Can you give me the information? I want you to participate. I'm going to participate. And by doing that, we can actually pass this legislation, which has been pending for 57 years.
57?
Yes.
Oh, since Jane Mansfield.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And so you could save, going forward, over 600 human beings a year. And just think of the tragedy and all of the anguish and everything, and the productivity in our country and everything that we've lost from losing those people that could have been saved. And guess what? They have proper prevention in Europe. So are Europeans more valuable than Americans? I think on a lot of levels, our government thinks yes, that they discount our lives tremendously.
Is it true? I think it's brought up sort of briefly in the interview with Nick Gillespie. Is Ralph Nader responsible for the airbags being in all? Okay, well then I will just mention, it's kind of an odd thing, but let's see. March 12th, 1994, I was in an accident which left me with spinal fluid leaks, but I would have been killed if it hadn't been for the airbags. So I will thank him on this day today for doing that. And I actually, kind of funny thing, in the 70s, before I had any clue who Ralph Nader was, my grandfather was a staunch Republican, and this was in Detroit. And I remember him complaining about Ralph Nader, like at the dinner table as a kid. And I grow up and end up, that's my first vote. But anyway.
Ralph was right on the dot. Let me jump in here and say, yeah, like why you're running as an independent, because these two political parties have sold us out, and they've sold us out in priorities of spending. Mm-hmm. They prioritize corporate profits. They prioritize all these things over us. Literal
destroys our society
existence. Or we could literally prevent deaths with health care, cleaning up your clean water supply, our food supply, not going underneath a truck and dying, so many things that with simple investment. And this is why I consider myself a lefty, because I believe in government investment. And I believe that the government as a wealth, vehicle, into funding vehicle is one of the most effective ways, and combined with the power of the law behind it. And so I believe in investment and not just letting the free market go. So anyway, again, making
you're trying to pick a fight, aren't you?
No, I'm not. No.
I'm just teasing.
Right now, the government's so corrupt, and
they're not representing,
and they're not doing that. But anyway, that's the idea of a transparent.
Right.
And not
I've got a question for everybody.
Go ahead, Michael. Let me pose this question though. So the idea is to make people's lives better. Let me kick it back to Karen first, and then Nadia. So just a few minutes. We got about 12 minutes left. So just give a few minutes. How do you envision your campaign making people's lives better? I know we asked you how you would consider it a success, but people's material lives, how can your campaign through education, activism, being involved in the community, how can you materially make people's lives better? Or how can people walk away after this election, win, lose, or draw? And so what are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm anti-war. I think that so much of the smoke and mirrors that both parties participate in regarding budget could be eliminated like that if we stopped funding Israel and if we stopped these wars. Not only would we have more money to do more good, to fund education, housing, Medicare for all, but also, and I think Anthony Aguilar might have mentioned this, or Greg Stoker on their appearances, but the U.S. military is the world's biggest polluter. Mm-hmm. Disgusting. And so I think just being anti-war an anti-military industrial complex will eliminate so many of the other issues.
Yes.
So that's
It'll
actually
open
a
up a
big
lot.
part of my platform.
That'll open up quite a bit of funding to help people. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
But-
Anything you want to add to that, Nadia?
Oh.
Sorry, Kelly.
Sure. First of all, I'm going to win the election. Like, I have every possibility of winning. So I have to motivate the people who came out last time to vote for me again, and then I will win. And I have enough money to put into this election, and I have enough energy. I have name recognition. I have a track record. There's no reason that I should lose. So I just want to say that up front. And then the main thing that I'm contributing to as a leader is to teach people that they need to make the cost of hurting citizens for the government higher than helping citizens. And it's only through that kind of pressure where you have organized, sustained time. You can't have business as usual. You have to make it impossible to have normal life until the government responds. And we can learn that from Italy, and we can learn that from France. When my kids were in the middle of the Mediterranean, they were being bombed by Israel, and nothing happened in Tunisia. The US government did nothing. Nothing happened in Greece. When they got to Italy, the whole country of Italy shut down commerce. And that is the power that American people have. We can shut down commerce. And believe me, things will change immediately when we do that. One day of shutting down commerce is losing billions of dollars. And
wouldn't it be great? I'm sorry. Wouldn't it be great if our farmers went to our state and national capitals and shot manure all over them like the French farmers did?
That's right.
That would be glorious.
When there were 2 kids in France that were killed by police, they were immigrant kids. French municipalities lit fires and did all of this civic action until the government did an investigation, and this kind of behavior, horrible militaristic behavior on civilians by the government, stopped. We all agree, Republicans, Democrats, any person in the United States does not want surveillance and militarism directed at civilians.
Right. Well, that brings me to a question. Actually, I want to ask Nadia, ask Karen. So I was thinking about the Alex Preddy murder, and I know that it went to, or it's going to court, and I didn't have time to look up whatever the latest is with it. I don't know if anyone else knows that off the top of their head, but it came up before, and I said, we have these tragic things happen on the street, and then it's like, okay, it's going to court. And then it's in court, as you know. I mean, you're an attorney and you've dealt with your own stuff with Boeing, and you're a judge. It lingers for years. And it's like, so these things happen and then they disappear behind this wall of like, and I brought it up a couple of times. I wonder if you guys have any interest in doing this. When people go to vote for you, there are a lot of other races on the ballot, and a lot of that is for judges, right? Now, it used to be when I was more like voting straight party, you'd still have to go look up and see what party they were with. But now that doesn't matter to me as much. And what I want to know is I start digging and finding out as much as I can about those judges. And I'm wondering if we could do something where there's education for voters about like, how did these judges rule on landlord-tenant cases or whatever, anything, stuff in the community. Like, I think that would be a really great action item thing for like a campaign volunteer that likes to do research. What do you think?
Kelly, that warms my heart.
Oh, good.
As an administrative judge who stood up and did the right thing and was fired for it, I think that judges and attorneys should be held to the highest standard. And it makes me sick that there are so many judges and attorneys who are not doing the right thing, who are staying quiet and being complicit, and they all need to be called out. But what you're talking about, I had a seed of that idea a few years ago and bought a web domain name for a project. I have so many projects in my head, and it is a transparency project. The web name is prosay.com, but
great.
pro
Yeah.
SAA instead of SE.
Okay.
And it would be educational, not only walking people through what each system, what each tribunal, how it works, what to expect. So many people represent themselves, but also this element of like, this is who's up for election. This is what their experience is. And you can do it in a way, not that it's infotainment, but a lot of people learn more visually. There's so many ways to present that information to make it more easily digestible and fun and engaging. And I think it definitely needs to be done. And that's something I'm on board with 100%.
Wonderful. So the website, is it still up?
No, I bought the web domain.
Oh, you bought it. Okay.
I got sidetracked by life.
Yeah, I think it ends up being this just wall of power that we can't see and the people can't see.
And it's by design.
Right.
My entire profession is by design. Our laws are written or were written to exclude people.
And Nadia, you brought up that it's usually just companies that sue. Well, that's because, you have to have a lot of money to bring a lawsuit, and it's intimidating. And yeah, the judges, you have no idea who's who.
Kelly, I'll just say one more thing.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of my own whistleblower lawsuit, and I've had to hire attorneys because it's such it's an area that requires such expertise, and it's costing me a pretty penny. Plus, I'm running for Congress, so and that's me with legal knowledge, with some resources. So the everyday American who doesn't have that particular those access to those particular tools is really like left in the dark. It's kind of tragic, actually.
Well, as a judge, though, do you have any objection to that?
No.
Okay. Because
No.
I think
my whole career has been in public service. My salary, everything is all out there. And I think when when you're in a position of public trust, you need to be transparent. You shouldn't be afraid to to have your record out there for people to scrutinize.
Right. But some won't like it, I'm sure.
Not too bad.
I love it. Okay, great. I think that's something we need, what Phil was saying, coming up with ideas of things that we can do. I think things like that will get the public's attention and go like, hey, this candidate means business,
And you're being paid by the public. It's like it's almost like the single subject bills. You can't hide. It's the same idea. Transparency when you're in a position of public service and you're getting paid by the taxpayers. Right. If you don't want that, go into private practice.
Right. Phil, were you going to ask something? It was a bit ago.
Yes, I was actually. And I think there's something we'll all agree on. Not all libertarians, I don't know what percentage, believe that corporations are not people. And that jurisprudence that occurred in the late 18th century was faulty and ridiculous and immoral. But I do, and I think that if we can work towards, I think there's common ground there between people all across the political spectrum. The idea that corporations, by their design, seek profit, but the fact that they're given the license to spend money on politicians because that money is classified as speech is a huge problem. I don't want to say it's the root of all of them, but if we could eliminate that, then maybe we can scale back the amount of money that candidates get to tell lies and support their lobbies.
We should have all corporations out of politics. Any political procedure, and we can legislate that even under the current, Supreme Court.
Yeah, there's a to amend movement. I don't know what it's called in different states, but I've worked with them in Wisconsin, basically killing Citizens United. I know that's not the only piece of Supreme Court jurisprudence that is the problem, but most people agree. Like you'll discover when you're running and you're talking to people about basic government, like do we have the right, should they have the right, those sorts of things, they'll agree with you. It's then when they get back away from their front door and start watching television or social media that they start getting inundated with messages from their sponsors, from their favorite groups that draw them back away from our messages, right?
Right. Hey, I got a question here. To other independent candidates out there or third-party people, Nadia or Karen, what is like a benefit of joining the independent network? What is your vision for the independent network? What would you like to see other libertarians, Greens, third parties, people do with the independent network?
We need to promise to band together to get some of these structural reforms to get our democracy functioning again. And we can do that. And so it's a huge advantage to join the network in order to build trust with each other, have conversations with each other, and make a plan on how we're going to do this. And then we can offer that to our voters. So see, that's something much more than I'm just running for Congress. I'm going to do my bit when I'm in Congress. No, we're going to be a block. We're going to deny Republicans and Democrats a majority, and we are going to get these reforms through.
Nice. Love that.
Yeah. Karen, did you want to say anything?
Oh, I'll just say beyond that, like, yes, amen to everything Nadia said. Beyond that, I'm meeting with people that live in very different areas and learning about their constituents. And we can also co-sponsor legislation, maybe something that's really important to someone in Montana doesn't affect
Right.
what the legislation they want to push through is not negative doesn't affect my district, but that's something I can co-sponsor. We can learn about each other. It's making bridges. I mean, it was incredible when we were all sitting there. We're all so different. When the ICN was in DC, and we had this moment where we looked at each other. We're like, this is it. This is the magic. This is what it really looks like to have the people run the House. So on just that very human level, I think, and you'll get support. We're also a hybrid PAC, so we're hoping to fundraise, modestly, but so that, we can run campaigns as well.
And you guys are very transparent with all of that? With
Yes.
Money? Okay, great. All right. So, and the website, I should have it pulled up here. I have your individual campaign websites up.
IndependentCandidateNetwork.com.
Oh, okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward, just like us.
It's
There
long,
we
but
go.
it's straightforward.
Great. Well, this has been so great. I can't wait to talk to more of the independent candidates, and this is wonderful. And we'd love to talk to you again sometime. Thank you guys so much for both of you for coming on.
Thank you
Thanks
for
very
having
much.
us. And
Thank you.
everybody,
Hearing from you.
pitch in and be involved because this is the future.
And do you want to give your websites too? Let's see. I can pull it up real quick. Let's see. We'll do that. We have Karen's right here. Let's see. Sorry.
Mine is KO for Congress. KO, the number
Here we go.
4, Congress.
Okay, there we go. And this is Nadia's. Here we go. Let's see. Did that show up? There we
Yep.
go. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
guys. It was a wonderful
everyone.
conversation.